I used to spend the night in hotel parking lots. What was I gonna do? I ain't had nowhere to stay, so I lived in the car. I had $35. And I said, come on, God, man, I've been trying to make this dream come true. You done left me out here like this. And I was crying so hard that he just said, I didn't like hear a voice or nothing, but he spoke to me, and however he said, if you get up, I'm gonna take you places you ain't never been. Now I was finna quit. So I said, skip it. I'm gonna quit anyway. So I got my car, I went to a payphone, and I was gonna call my dad. You remember back in the day where you could punch in a code and call your answering machine and get your messages? So I called, and I punched in the code, and it said, doop. He said, hey Steve, this is Chuck Sutton with Showtime at the Apollo. We saw a tape of you. You're very funny. If you could get here Sunday night, we'd love to put you on television. Call me back, let me know if you can make it. So I hung the phone up, I'm crushed. Cause my whole dream of being on TV, and I couldn't get to New York. I got $35. How am I gonna get to New York? I can't make it. So I'm standing there at the phone booth, and tears just coming down my face. I said, God, so that must be a sign for me to go home. Cause this it, I ain't even got the money to go to the Apollo. My whole thing, I wanted to be on TV, I couldn't even make the dream come true. This is the most messed up moment. And so I said, man, let me call this dude back and see if he said this Sunday. Because maybe he said next Sunday, and I could hustle up a little bit of money or something. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but let me just call him back. So I called him back. Steve, this is Chuck Sutton, Showtime at the Apollo. We saw a tape of yours, you're very, very funny. Look, we have an opening Sunday night at Showtime at the Apollo. If you can make it, we'd love to put you on TV. I said, it's this Sunday. Before I hit the button, I heard, doop, you have another message. Now, it wasn't there before. So I punched my code in, I listened to the second message. It said, Steve Harvey, this is Tom Soul from the Comedy Caravan. This was a Thursday. He said, I have a gig in Jacksonville, Florida on Friday night that pays $150. If you can get there Friday night, you'll make $150. So I called him back and I said, hey Tom, did you get a gig away? He said, no, it's still available. He said, can you get that? I said, I'm in Pensacola, Florida. I'm 3.5 hours away. So I drive to Jacksonville, Florida, and that night I killed, I made the 150. The club owner said, man, you funnier than the guy we hired. If you stay tomorrow night, I'm gonna give you another $150. So now I got $300 now. So I get on the phone, I call Chuck Sutton. I say, hey man, is the gig still available at Showtime at the Apollo? He said, yeah, we got one opening left. I said, I'll be there. So I called Eastern Airlines, who used to be open back then. They had a special for $99 going from Jacksonville, Florida to New York round trip. So I parked my car at the airport. I got it.
In the 1950s, my father was pastoring a thriving church. They just built a beautiful new sanctuary. He was on the state board for his denomination. His future looked very bright. Then my sister Lisa was born with something like cerebral palsy. The doctors told my parents she would probably need constant care. My father went to a hotel downtown for a few days to be alone and study the scripture. He told how he took off his denominational glasses and he read the Bible like he was reading it for the first time. He saw how Jesus went around healing people, how he was a God of miracles. He came back to his church with his new message of faith and victory. He thought they would be so excited, but it was just the opposite. It didn't fit into their tradition. There was so much divisiveness that my father ended up having to leave the church. He was devastated. He and my mother had poured their heart and soul into those people for years, and now it was all gone. My mother had lifelong friends that never spoke to her again. When you come to these places that are not fair, it's a critical time. It's easy to get bitter, give up on life, let that be excuse to never do anything great. You have to dig down deep, say, God, this is painful, it doesn't make sense, but I know you're still in control. You wouldn't have allowed it if you didn't have a purpose for it. It wasn't my father's fault that he got knocked down. That was an injustice, but it was his responsibility to get back up. He and my mother went out and started Lakewood on Mother's Day, 1959, with 90 people. They just come from this big, beautiful sanctuary. Now they were in an old, rundown feed store. Had holes in the floor, cracks in the ceiling, beat up chairs. But you have to take the hand you've been dealt and make the most of it. Your destiny is not in what you've lost, but in what you have left. Anything you've lost, you didn't need to become who you were created to be. Friendships, people, contracts, opportunities. If you lost it, don't sweat it. What you have left is what God is going to use to take you into your purpose.
God is not unjust to forget your labor of love. You don't have to get even with people. God will make them bow down and have to come back and admit that they were wrong. Don't worry about it. It may not happen today, but sooner or later, sooner or later, God will bring them down to their knees. Sooner or later, God will make them humble themselves. And the brothers have come into the room and they run into Zaphanath-Paneah and they don't know that it's Joseph. Zaphanath-Paneah is speaking to them in Egyptian. He is speaking to them in the Egyptian language. And so they are talking amongst themselves in Hebrew. And Joseph doesn't let on that he understands what they are saying. Because sometimes you have to feign yourself a fool. Sometimes you can't let people know that you know what you know. Sometimes you can't act like you're as smart as you are. Sometimes you got to act like you don't get it. Sometimes you, see, that's where you've been messing up. Every time you know something, you got to say something. But sometimes you got to know something and hold your peace. Zaphanath-Paneah held his peace and did not let on that he spoke Hebrew. And as they spoke amongst themselves, they said, watch this. And this is important. This is very important. They were bowing down and they were having difficulty getting the corn that the old man had sent them to buy. And they were murmuring. You know how brothers do. They were arguing amongst themselves. We brought this on ourselves. I told you not to do anything to that boy. Look at how long these brothers have carried the pain of what they did. They are in pain because they are guilty over what they did to Joseph. And they don't even know that this man is Joseph. And yet they are talking about Joseph because they have never been able to escape this injury, this trauma. The colloquy of their conversation has taken on a nature that lets you know that they are still reliving the guilt and the agony of what they went through. This is important because we often talk about Joseph as the victim, but we don't talk about the pain of the perpetrator. You need to hear this because the person who hurt you didn't get away clean. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying to you. You think you're the only one that had any pain because you went in the pit, but the one who threw you in the pit has to live with the guilt that you never did a thing to hurt them. And God is too just to let them get away without suffering. They may not have gone in a prison that you can see, but these boys are in a prison as much as Joseph has ever been, because they have never been able to escape. How in the world can you go to buy corn and bring up something that happened when you were children? That means that one incident has been with them all their life. They're still arguing about it in the palace. And they said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. This is the agony of the guilty.
And that was my turn back moment. See, in your life, everybody has a turn back moment. You have a moment where you can go forward or you can give up. The thing you have to keep in mind before you give up is that if you give up, the guarantee is it will never happen. That's the guarantee of quitting, that it will never happen, no way under the sun. The only way the possibility remains that it can happen is if you never give up no matter what. Because God is always coming. He's never too late. At your worst moment, look man, when they told me I had to be in New York, I saw no way I could get there. But that God don't. He make the phone ring. I end up in Florida, I make $300. Then I go to New York, I make $750. Almost got $1,000 out of nowhere. That's what happened to me. That was my moment of never giving up. That's when I first learned that faith was everything, that you have to remain faithful